Welcome to my first video on the Pegasus system. So if you don't know me or you have never seen the channel, you might not know that I quote unquote invented a chess opening. I don't like the term invented. I think every chess opening is already out there and they can only be discovered. So I would say I discovered this opening and I was one of the first people to really study this, and also I wrote a chess book, the Pegasus system, on this opening. So in this video, I will give you a basic introduction to the Pegasus system and give you all of the main IDs so you can get an idea of like what is this opening, what are the main IDs you want to go for. So you can basically start trying out the opening and start playing it. Of course, I won't be able to cover every single thing that I mentioned in the book, so still the book is valuable. Also, if you want to know the backstory about the opening, things like that. And example games, exercises, all of that is in the book. But we're going to cover some position. So today we're going to take a look at the mainline position. And what you can currently see right now is the most important image. If you can just remember this, you will know the basic ID for the Pegasus and most variations. Of course, there are many sublines, which I will cover in future videos as well. So this setup, if you look at this might seem similar to other things you have already seen. So we're going to play a d4 opening. We are going to put our knight on d2, which is the Pegasus knight, and then we are usually going to develop our pieces like this with future plans of b3 and bishop b2, sometimes a3, b4, sometimes queen b3 as well. So the Pegasus system mainline, that's what we're going to look at right now. So we are going to start off with pawn to d4 as our first move. And then it's up to black. And of course, black can play many different things, but I try to create the Pegasus system in a way that basically you don't need to study a lot of lines to play this. Black has so many options, but you usually have the same type of plan. The Pegasus was originally invented to destroy knight f6. That's why I invented it. So it's best against knight f6. Knight f6 is a move by black that they play to try and control both e4 and the d5 square. And the thing as white that we would love to do in the Pegasus system is we would love to push our pawn to e4. If we could get both pawns in the center, that would be quite amazing and we would have a good central control. So knight f6 is a really popular move, and that's why we are going to play knight to d2. The Pegasus knight, really important piece, and we are putting this piece here basically because we want to try and force e4 onto our opponents on the next move. And this will surprise your opponents because almost nobody knows this, almost nobody plays this. I'm one of the first to really write chess literature on this opening. So knight to d2, trying to force this e4 push. You might think that this is a suboptimal move because like you can play c4, knight c3, but you will soon realize that knight d2 is a really good option, even though almost nobody really plays it. If black wants to stop your pawn to e4, they basically only have one real option, and that is playing pawn to d5. And that is also our Pegasus system mainline, where now black is stopping our plan, and this will just make it impossible for us to play a quick e4. That's fine. We have many different plans in the Pegasus, even if we can't play for the quick e4. This is also where I want to mention that if black plays d4, d5, yes, you can also play the Pegasus. You can also play knight to d2. But of course, like this knight is still not here on f6. You're also blocking your own queen. You might get hit by a quick c5. So things are a little bit more complicated. This is playable, but it's a bit more complicated. I'm not going to cover that in this video, but you can still play many of the Pegasus system moves, which we have seen before, and then later on play your knight to d2 and basically transpose into the Pegasus system with a little bit of a different move order as well. So we are here in this position and black plays pawn to d5. Well, we can't play pawn to d4, but we still want to continue with our development, so we're going to play pawn to e3. And here you can see some of the basic IDs. The main idea is that we are going to push pawn to c4, and it's going to be protected twice, once by the knight and once by our bishop. Okay, we don't currently have control over e4, but that's fine. We are going to try and fight the center with a c4 push. That's also why having a knight on d2 is really useful, because otherwise you will often have to recapture with the bishop. Now we will have the option of recapturing with the knight. Black has many different things they can try to go for. The most popular is to play bishop to f5. Bishop f5, most popular, most played move, maybe even most logical move, because, well, black just simply tries to make it impossible for us to ever play pawn to e4 while also developing a piece. The other thing is for black, black would actually like to castle kingside most likely. And they have to play e6 and bishop e7 and castle, but wait a minute, they are blocking in their own bishop. That doesn't seem very right, so maybe they want to get out the bishop first and then play e6 later on. There are of course many different moves as well for black. You can play the Pegasus against all of them, but there are some different variations. In this video we will only cover the main line, so the bishop f5 line, which you will see the most. Bishop f5 line, and yeah, that's really where the Pegasus begins. Other variations, as I said, are possible. For example, bishop g4 is also a line. Immediately playing e6, the closed variation is also a line. There are even variations where black doesn't play d5 and yeah, they just play something else, and then you do have the chance to play for a quick d4 e4 center. But that's all going to be covered in future videos. Today we are taking a look at bishop to f5. So that's the main line. Against this, we are going to continue with our plan. Our plan is just to push c4, and this also gives black a couple of different options. Currently we are attacking this pawn, so black can simply try and defend it with e6 or c6. Both of those are possible moves. Or black could also capture. Those are the main ideas that we are going to take a look at today. So we are going to start off with the first game. This is also a game from the book. So this is a game played by Moshe Cerniak, and I definitely have to mention his name. He was a pretty good chess player who was, in my opinion, probably the first to really work on the Pegasus system. He did a lot of research on it, but he didn't have strong chess engines at the time, and he preferred a little bit of a different move order. But I studied some of his games, and then I came up with the Pegasus system. So Cerniak, important chess player, we're going to follow one of his games. So he plays just d4, d2. This is what he played. He even played this against Capablanca one time. That game is also in the book. So yeah, trying to push for e4. His opponents played pawn to d5. He plays e3. Opponents plays bishop to f5, and then he plays pawn to c4. So going for the Pegasus system. And there are so many different variations, as I said, but we are going to take a look here at pawn to c6. So we're going to continue with the main ideas in the Pegasus. So there are a couple of things you can do, and even here, if you don't follow the exact move order, that's usually not a problem. But the thing I like to play here is queen to b3, an early queen to b3. And the queen to b3 move is really a key idea in the Pegasus, even though you only really get to play it against some of the main line. Against all of the other lines, you won't usually play queen to b3. And the reason why queen to b3 is so strong is because, well, first of all, we are putting pressure on this weak b7 pawn, because the black bishop just left this unguarded. So we are winning a little bit of time here. Black is a little bit annoyed, like I have to do something about this. At the same time, we're also putting some extra pressure in the center, which is always good. And maybe you didn't notice this, but we're also guarding this square, the d3 square. So we can in the future even put our bishop here, and then we can trade. Because otherwise, yeah, it's a little bit annoying. You can't really develop the bishop. Maybe you have to put it here, but it's a little bit more passive. So queen to b3. Yeah, and of course, again, many different options by black. But here, black plays queen to c7. I think the main idea is queen c7, queen c8. I think those are, yeah, just simple moves to defend. You could, of course, also drop back the bishop, which you probably don't want to do. The same idea exists if black plays pawn to e6, then you can just play queen b3, but then they don't have this option of going back. So queen c7 is a pretty, yeah, principal move. Some other things you might possibly want to know is, let's say, yeah, let's just say white captures. Well, our idea then is to capture back with the bishop. We capture with the bishop, and this immediately puts a lot of pressure here on this f7 pawn. We have the queen, we have the bishop lined up against this, and we also have the queen lined up against b7. So let's say black plays e6, bam, we now take here on b7, maybe knight goes here, and then we take this pawn. And yeah, white's just already winning. So that is one of the variations that can happen if black decides to capture early on in the game. Also, this can happen, of course, if black captures immediately, if you do recapture with the bishop. But we don't get that here. Another variation which is common is sometimes where black plays queen b6, both protecting and also challenging your queen. That's possible. Usually you just proceed with the normal Pegasus move, knight here. If they capture, that's not a problem, because, well, first of all, we now have this pawn here which protects c4, and that's quite amazing, because if you can, In this opening, if you can, you will usually recapture here with a pawn and some of those variations. And also our rook has been opened. So nothing really to fear from this specific variation. So queen c7, and we are going to continue with knight to f3, developing our knight, also putting pressure here, and we are not going to exchange this or sell, so we're going to keep this for now. Knight e7 by black. Again, other moves are possible. Sometimes against this, if you face something like e6, there is always the plan in the Pegasus to go bishop hunting and to try and eliminate this bishop, which you can do by playing knight to h4. The bishop has to move, most likely, then you can take, and yeah, you just eliminate the bishop. But sometimes this can be a problem. For example, here you might have a little bit of a weakness. You have to be careful for that if the queen is on c7. Also, in some variations, black just plays bishop here, and if you go for take, and then they can take with the pawn or with the knight. But sometimes, like, where are you going to retreat? Then you have to play g3. This is all playable. The engine even says this is fine. But I personally don't like this. But if you want to play the Pegasus like this, you can always do it. Do it like this. And I like to go for this, bishop d3. And this is just a simple move. We are developing, we are preparing to castle on the next move. And we are also challenging the bishop at the same time. I think almost everybody will capture. We can recapture with the queen. And now our queen, which honestly wasn't doing much anymore here, if black doesn't fall for any tricks, like capturing early on here or leaving something undefended. But now we have a queen in the center, which also protects e4. And we eliminated this really important bishop that was eyeing down in our position. So we do have better chances here now to play pawn to e4 in the future. So for example, e6 by black, we can castle, bishop d6 by black, just regular moves. And then, yeah, there are multiple things you can do here. And the Pegasus, as I have said before, you can pretty much do anything you want. You can play b3 early on, you can develop the bishop, you can develop rooks. But in this particular position, you can actually play e4. You might say this is a little bit too soon, that this is a game you are following by Cerniak, so you might say he played this a little bit too soon. I think it's still fine, because all of a sudden there are some tricks here. The first trick is that, well, we could potentially push this and just win a piece. So yeah, black can't castle, otherwise that just forks the bishop and the knight. So that's not really a possibility. So most likely black will capture. And a couple of things are possible. For example, if the knight captures, we can go for take, take, take. The queen is activated. We still have a really strong center here. And things are still not super clear for black. What is black going to do? Black can castle two sides. For example, king side. And then things are about equal, but white really does have the better center, centralized pieces. We can activate the bishop, activate the rooks, and we have a fine position here as well. Something else they can try, which is not so good actually, but happens sometimes, is they take on c4, but that just activates the Pegasus knight. And now still, there is this fork potentially coming, this trade is potentially coming, so probably, yeah, black just has to retreat. We can go with bishop g5, and these things are really tricky, and it's easy for black to get a losing position in these lines. Just one example, for example, if you castle and then you can get hit with the pawn, like what's happening here? Like, yeah, doesn't really look so good for black either. So a lot of options. I think probably pawn takes e4 is the best approach by black, which leads to knight takes, and then again we are now threatening to capture the bishop. And some variations you can take here and double the pawns if that knight is not defending. And yeah, black has to make a choice. Usually black will capture, you can take the queen. And now we have a similar position as we have seen before. Even if black plays knight f6, kicking away your queen, you can move it. And it's always a little bit difficult for black to find a really good plan here, because the black position can easily be attacked in almost every single variation. The thing is, here, we would love to play, if we could, bishop to g5, and then put a lot of pressure here, maybe crash the bishop, create some double pawns, create some weaknesses, jump in with the knight later on, and then try and go for some kingside attack. So let's say if black would be able to castle, bishop g5, and then maybe bishop here. but still this is pretty passive from black, and white still has some pressure. White can easily now develop rooks and have a pleasant position for the rest of the game. Uh, H6 I think is a pretty funny move here, because it's kind of stopping bishop g5, but actually not really, because like, of course, yeah, you would just be able to do this check and then also pick up a couple of rooks. So I think that's a pretty interesting variation as well. But here, Cerniak played rook e1, black castled kingside, queenside, which could be a little bit dangerous. But at the same time, if black were to castle kingside, there's the bishop sacrifice here on h6, which is quite amazing. And after the recapture, now we just capture this knight. So yeah, the black position, it's really tough to play for the black pieces. And up to this point, I have played pretty good moves for black. And even if they play pretty good moves, they still have not such a good position. And if they go wrong and castle kingside, they just immediately lose the game as well. So yeah, it's not easy. Of course, g5 also, yeah, you don't want to run into any of this as black. So it's not easy to find a good plan. So you're probably going to castle queenside, but then you also have to realize that even if you castle queenside, we already have so many pawn pushes that we can do here on the queen side. We already have so much activity with the rooks. So yeah, not such a good position for black. Here immediately, c5, the bishop has to move, and then knight e5, we are coming in and we are potentially doing a fork as well. So really good play, immediately capitalizing on the fact that the black position is weak. And I'm pretty sure that maybe a couple of minutes ago you thought that, well, black's position is fine. It's not really fine. This is why easily black starts losing material. Here black tries to do a little counterattack. We just move the queen. And then, for example, here, yeah, black still has some issues, right? Black still has to defend this. Here black chose to play rook f8, which defends, but of course it's also a little bit passive. There's not much else to say. You could say, well, there is still a pawn here that's free. Yeah, of course, this is a free pawn, but you can take here, you can attack the rook, you can take here with check, you can take the bishop. So the black position is just completely falling apart in this line as well. So this free pawn actually cannot be taken. And that's been the case actually for a while. Here it was defended, and then now it cannot be taken. It's kind of a poisoned pawn. And a really interesting move here is bishop takes c5, which actually kind of keeps things equal for black if black finds this. For example, after taking here, taking this, and then we got a trade. Still, white is a little bit better, but yeah. It's an interesting approach by black, but black played a little bit too passive, and then it's just a good game. If you play too passive against the Pegasus, you are going to lose. Here we have a beautiful move, knight takes f7. Yeah, we just still take the pawn, and basically the rook cannot recapture because of queen takes, check, and rook is hanging, and in some variations the bishop might also be hanging. So we just win a free pawn, we also attack the rook. Rook has to move. This is also under attack, so I don't know what else to say. Black is just losing pretty badly. g4, a desperate attempt, but we just play queen to e3, which basically sets up all of the, yeah, that's it, all of the same threads yet again. And yeah, that's just light out good game for black. Black here went on to play bishop takes c5, and then after knight takes d8, black resigns, and that's it. Because of course this is still hanging, this check is still coming, the bishop is coming in, and black is just going to be destroyed.